So, Capsule Monsters. Let's talk about it. I haven't talked about any of these games so far, which actually ties back into when I wanted to start this project initially. I really wanted to begin with the first Yu-Gi-Oh branded game, which was Monster Capsule Breed and Battle. I mean, many people haven't even heard of it, let alone seen it in action. The problem is, the game has never been localized, and no translation projects exist for it, not even partials that I could find. So, I decided to begin with the first Duel Monsters game, as that would be a good jumping off point for how the games would continue to develop anyway. And yet, I really wanted to cover these Capsule Monster games. I couldn't do Breed and Battle, and then when the chronology came up to Capsule Monsters GB, I once again decided not to cover it. That was when I came upon an idea I wouldn't be able to execute on for quite a while. Part of the goal of this project was to cover the gradual evolution of the card-based video games. So, why not cover all three Capsule Monsters games at once? So, that's what you're watching now. It's worth noting that Capsule Monster Coliseum is the only Capsule Monster game that was ever fully localized. Breed and Battle and GB are both Japanese only, which I, unfortunately, cannot read. But that doesn't mean I can't learn by feel. What follows is the culmination of that journey. So buckle up and get ready to hatch some creatures or buy them from a gacha machine. We're gonna play monster chess. But first, as always, we begin by taking a look at the various promotional cards offered by purchasing one of these games at your local game retailer. I remain dedicated to my mission to talk about the promo cards for each of these games, even if the cards weren't actually playable game pieces, such is the case with Breed and Battle. It came with a random assortment of a total of 10 cards, which were Batty, Blue Eyes White Dragon, Demonis, Dinosaur Wing, Ironoid, Mystical Elf, Red Scorpion, Runner Lizard, Sonic Eye, and Zork. All of these were included as collectibles, and you've likely seen the card frames before if you've ever gone down a deep rabbit hole of Yu-Gi-Oh history. I think it's personally the most interesting that they would use the art of Blue Eyes that would end up in the anime and in the starter decks, as opposed to the other existing arts from the original anime. But it is kind of the best one, so it's not exactly a big surprise. Capsule Monsters GB, as far as I can tell, didn't have any kind of promotional cards, collector or otherwise, and that's a real shame. Finally, Capsule Monsters Coliseum came with a set of 3 promo cards that actually were tournament legal and could be played with your friends. They were Tiva, Inferno Hammer, and Abyss Soldier. For once, all releases of this game in every region had the same promo pool. Finally, a united front on something. Tiva and Inferno Hammer would only ever see the light of day when opening this game for the first time, but Abyss Soldier would actually see quite a bit of competitive attention. Water decks, or decks that otherwise relied on Umi and the like, would capitalize on Abyss Soldier's removal ability, on top of coming out when 4-star high attack monsters still had a place in the world. Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Capsule Breed and Battle was released on July 23, 1998, and is the very first video game made featuring the Yu-Gi-Oh! IP. Yami Yugi and Blue Eyes White Dragon front and center on the box. Now, believe it or not, virtual pet and monster breeding games were incredibly popular in the 90s. I need only point you to Tamagotchi or to Digimon to settle that point for all of you. But with the advent of the monster chess game from the manga, an opportunity was seen and ultimately executed by Konami, the storied video game developer that would soon be seeing a much greater than likely expected relationship to Yu-Gi-Oh! As a franchise. In the game, you can duel one of the main cast of characters in a tournament setting. There really wasn't much to do beyond that, and getting stronger pieces, of course. You can set up little homes for your monster and chess pieces, and even decorate them with set pieces that affect their growth and stats. Unfortunately, I can't get too into the weeds here on this, because I don't read any kind of Japanese, so getting the nuances by feel gets impossible at a certain extent. I do know you can eventually make Blue Eyes White Dragon, and that is one of, if not the, strongest pieces you can make, so that's pretty cool. As a virtual pet game you did not have to take with you, this game seems pretty good, and well designed. Digimon World already did exist though, and Monster Rancher had already set a standard for these kinds of games, all on the PlayStation. I think Breed and Battle does find a nice niche for itself by relying on existing IP and leveraging their already iconic monster designs for some of the chess pieces. Overall, Breed and Battle is a real weird game, made in a time when Konami was still willing to take big swings in the video game world. But does that energy continue into the new millennium? Released on April 13th, 2000, Capsule Monsters GB is a follow-up to the Capsule Monsters lineage of titles that I can succinctly describe as ambitious. Taking inspiration from other successful Game Boy RPGs like Pokemon Trading Card Game, this game puts you in the shoes of Yugi, who has accepted an invitation from a recently mind-controlled Seto Kaiba to the Duel Tower, which immediately steals the souls of all of Yugi's friends and family, which he must reclaim by making his way up the tower. How does he accomplish this? By playing monster chess, or Capsule Monsters as the title would suggest. This game is, unfortunately, really cool. I say unfortunately because it was never localized anywhere else. I get why that is, since it relies on characters in a game that never made its way outside of Japan, but come on, this game rules! There is a partial fans translation, and I do mean partial, only really translating some of the dialogue boxes of the first area. But congrats to the contributors for this project, because inside that patch was a readme that indicated the last update was in 2003, and the notes said they were preparing for the next update. I wonder what happened there. I really felt like I uncovered some history finding this thing, but still very cool that people understood this game was worth localizing even that early on. Using scenarios from the original run of the manga and Toei anime, and characters from as late as the Dual City arc, this game creates a unique atmosphere that isn't really present in any other Yu-Gi-Oh game. By streamlining the monster chess aspect of the Breed and Battle game, they have created an entirely new game that is cool unto itself. After beating the game, there's even some post-game times. That's a lot of games in one sentence. Here, you can fight all of the characters and even unlock Yami Yugi as a playable monster chess piece. How fun is that? But that's really all I've got for these two games. Without being able to fully dive in, it's hard to go as in-depth as normal, but I wanted to talk about them here both for your benefit as the viewer, and as a foundation, a Minecraft bedrock, if you will, for the primary subject of the video, Capsule Monsters Coliseum. Capsule Monsters Coliseum released in Japan on July 29th, 2004, and in North America on November 26th, 2004. This would be the final entry in the Capsule Monsters video game series, making it really the capstone of a trilogy, so that's fun. This game features a far more robust rule set than ever before, allowing for much more strategy and team building. Additionally, there are no breeding mechanics or lottery mechanics, and instead allows you to purchase your chess pieces a la carte from Grandpa's shop. He's everywhere, man. He's a real entrepreneur. There are also an order of magnitude more monsters available for use, and all of them have trading card game counterparts. Shame to see the likes of Runner Lizard disappear, but their influence will never be forgotten. This game takes the story formula established in GB, actually, even further into the modern era, using all the brand new characters from Yu-Gi-Oh's anime and manga, giving some unusually high-resolution renders that are unusually cropped improperly, that are heavily shaded, and even getting their English dub actors to stop by and provide the dialogue. The story is, essentially, Yugi takes part in a tournament where he must defeat all of the opponents in an area to move on to the next one. Sound familiar? This ultimately culminates into fighting Kaiba, winning, and claiming the title of king of yet another game on the market. Pretty soon, Yugi's gonna have some antitrust lawsuits the way he's monopolized the Game King industry, am I right? Here's the basic lowdown of how Capsule Monster Coliseum works. Each player has a symbol, which is sort of like a king piece in chess, and you can bring out as many capsules as you have points for. Weaker ones cost less points, stronger ones cost more points. It's up to you to determine which arrangement works best. Your symbol has health, and if its health reaches 0, you're out of there. Or if you run out of pieces, you're also out of there. Same is true for the opponent. An additional step of the gameplay is added here where you have an action point economy. They call it monster points, or MP, in which you can move and attack your pieces and also hatch them from the capsule eggs. I think this adds a really cool level of strategy and planning to the encounters. In previous titles, you can only move one piece and do one attack, so this led to quite a bit of wheel spinning, or jockeying for a tactical position, or doing a tactical sacrifice of your piece to give another one overwhelming tempo advantage on the next turn. On the egg, you can see what attribute the monsters are, but not which monster it is specifically. This allows you to at least plan what attributes you want to bring, or maybe back out entirely and get the right kinds of pieces from Grandpa. Speaking of those attributes, there are several of them. You have the typical offenders here of fire, water, light, dark, earth, and wind, but then there are also 2 new friends on the table, which are thunder and wood. Feels like an odd choice to me, but I didn't make the game. These follow a typical affinity chart, so each one has a weakness and a strength relative to another attribute. The addition of the 2 attributes does expand out the options you have for encounter design, even if some of the affinities and weaknesses are a bit of a stretch as to what exactly they are strong against. Each of the opponents has a custom stage that is suited to putting the players at a disadvantage if they are unaware of the stage traps. By investigating the area and taking a look at the attributes of capsules the opponent has put down, you can make some educated guesses about what would give you the upper hand. But another feature to consider is that the entire stage itself will undergo changes. For example, on the very first stage, Joey brings a bunch of fire monsters to a board that will ultimately slowly become flooded. This means you, the player, can bring water monsters to capitalize on this. This is because water monsters not only benefit from the water terrain, the fire monsters are also weakened by it. Some boards even have hazards on them that will harm pieces other than the specified type that can survive them, like an exposed wire dealing damage to any piece that isn't thunder. Terrain is really the name of the game. But what is also the name of the game is bringing powerful capsule pieces, taking into account their move patterns and their attack patterns. Because you have your allotment of points each turn, choosing the right move for each of your pieces really decides the game, in a single turn sometimes. Poorly placing your pieces or failing to exploit a weakness in the enemy formation can spell disaster for you, and you'll have a really hard time in return. When one of your pieces die, it is gone for good. Sort of. In the first 2 titles, they would disappear entirely and you would need to get new ones. In Capsule Monsters Coliseum, however, the pieces stick around in your collection. When a piece is able to destroy an enemy piece, though, it gains experience, and when it breaks its threshold, it can level up and become stronger. Also, once some pieces level up, they can be used for Capsule Monster Fusion, in which 2 pieces can combine into a single stronger piece. There are some iconic ones like Exodia or Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon that are especially high value. Additionally, there is a mechanic for evolution, through leveling up the monsters on their own and also by being on a certain field type in order to get their attribute score up. This is like Pokemon or something. This game is a real special novelty despite its limited scope. It does beg the question if this was designed with the possibility of perhaps additional Capsule Monsters games coming out in the future, but I'm glad this one is as good as it is. As a trilogy of games in this style, I'm glad Capsule Monster Coliseum gets to be the finale. It's a well-polished monster chess game that evolved sufficiently within the boundaries of what it initially presented. Now, are there some flaws with the initial concept as well? Of course. I mean, Duel Monsters is the one that people willed into existence after all, and not monster chess. But the idea of revealing your monster on the board and having those monsters be ones you have raised in some capacity to be stronger gave these games a very, like said before, Pokemon feel, where you wanted to see how strong your pieces could get. I'm also glad I got to talk about all three of these games at once, because I think it ultimately works better to take them all into context with each other, since they are such clear evolutions from one game to the next. These games are a joy, and I would recommend playing at least the PS2 game or the GB one if you have an inclination to read the language. We are quickly approaching the end of an era of these games, with the looming end of the anime and beginning of the first spin-off series. However, a few games still remain until then. Which one is next? You'll just have to wait to find out. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.